The night before the engagement, the man I'd grown up with, my fiancé Lu Yan, had fallen for someone else. "I'm in love with another woman," he said. "I won't marry you." I let go without a fuss, then turned around and got together with his half-brother. The younger brother was obedient, clingy, and drop-dead gorgeous, a sweet, doting puppy around me. I was totally smitten. But Lu Yan? He was furious. He cornered me. "You can date anyone you want," and he only act Muran, but why on earth would I listen to him? My soon-to-be husband Lu Yan had been acting weird lately. When we went shopping together, he was distracted the whole time. He'd never been into shopping, true, but he'd always sit patiently on the sofa in the store, watching me with that helpless yet doting look in his eyes. Now, though, he was clearly miles away, lost in some vague melancholy, staring at his phone every so often like he was waiting for a life-changing message. And he'd been so busy lately, barely finding time to meet me at all. His strangeness peaked over dinner. He ordered a wild large yellow croaker. Lu Yan had fish. He'd instinctively frown at the mere sight of it. Then the phone rang. He picked it up casually, his expression not shifting one bit. Too bad he forgot. He never checked his phone during meals. Lu Yan frowned slightly, then turned to me. "My assistant's calling, probably something urgent. I'll take this outside." His staff would never dare bother him after hours, not with the sky-high salary he paid them. As he always said, if they couldn't handle things on their own, he wasn't about to waste his money on useless people. I nodded obediently, not calling him out on his lie. Lu Yan pushed open the private room door and stepped out. The club had a Southeast Asian vibe, with a full wall of floor-to-ceiling glass. The courtyard was lined with banana plants, and I watched him brush aside a large leaf. Under the dim eaves light, one hand in his pocket, he took the call on the veranda. I saw his smile, crystal clear, soft, tender, like the hard edges of his personality had melted away entirely. Then he seemed to realize something, and turned his back to me. I couldn't keep up the fake smile any longer. I was absolutely certain now his bizarre behavior had one explanation: a woman. I didn't blow up right away because Lu Yan had taught me well: stay calm, no matter what happens. It didn't take long for me to dig up dirt on the woman he'd fallen for. Wen Zuji, 1 year older than me, a graduate student at the city's top university. She wasn't breathtakingly beautiful, but she had bright, dark eyes, fair skin, and a quiet, scholarly air, like she was completely innocent of the ways of the world. I'd planned to take my time, to plot my move carefully, but I wasn't nearly as good at hiding my feelings as I thought. All my restraint crumbled in an instant. It was Wen Zuji's birthday. I knew he'd be with her, but I insisted Lu Yan come with me to the ballet. He hesitated on the phone, but I refused to back down. In the end, he pulled his usual trick for when he'd upset me, promising to buy me another bag, saying he had urgent business and we'd go another time. His urgent business was celebrating a woman he'd known less than a month. He'd rather lie to me than cancel on her. I was done playing this cat-and-mouse game. When I burst into the restaurant, Lu Yan was on the terrace, lighting the candles on Wen Zuji's cake. The candlelight flickered as he sang her happy birthday, that gentle, affectionate tone, the same one I'd thought was reserved for me, now directed at someone else. The surrounding guests kept glancing over, whispering and laughing. Lu Yan was the center of attention wherever he went. I'd always been able to spot him in a crowd. But that smile on his lips cut me like a knife. He was so focused on Wen Zuji, he didn't even notice me approaching. I marched over, grabbed the nearest bottle of red wine, and dumped it over his head. The whole scene happened so fast, Wen Zuji didn't even have time to scream. The onlookers gasped. When Lu Yan registered what had happened, he stood up, snatched a bottle from my hand, wiped the wine off his face, and his voice was a low, thunderous growl. "Shan Qin Yu, what the hell are you doing?" But even then, angry as he was, he couldn't bring himself to yell at me. When he saw my red, tear-filled eyes, his voice softened a little. "What are you doing here?" I let out a bitter laugh. "What am I doing here?" My gaze shifted to Wen Zuji. "Is this what top university grad students do these days? Play the kept woman? Or did your parents never teach you the meaning of decency?" Wen Zuji's face turned as white as a sheet. She looked from Lu Yan to me, then shook her head, her voice trembling. "I didn't, so innocent. So pitiful." I raised my hand to slap her, but Lu Yan reacted instantly, grabbing my wrist and shoving me hard backward. I lost my balance and fell to the ground with a thud. Lu Yan hadn't meant to push me that hard. He reached out to catch me, but it was too late. I locked myself in my room for days after that. Lu Yan came to see me, but I refused to let him in until my mom finally took pity and let him through the door. I turned my face away, not wanting to look at him, but he knelt down in front of my chair, holding my shoulders to keep me from moving, and looked up at me. He took my hand in his voice soft with apology. "Qingyu, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you." I stared coldly at the wall, but tears kept rolling down my cheeks despite my best efforts to hold them back. He sighed and gently wiped the tears from my face with his thumb. "When did you find out?" The mere mention of her made my blood boil. I whipped around and slapped him hard across the face. Lu Yan didn't get angry. If anything, he smiled a sad, bitter smile. He lifted me up and carried me to the bed, lying down beside me and pressing soft kisses to my tear-stained cheeks, one by one. "What did I teach you?" he murmured. "Don't let your emotions get the better of you. Don't make a scene. Don't lose your dignity. You're a lady, not some street brawler." He brushed a hair off my forehead, his touch as gentle as it had always been. I'd always loved him more than anyone, more than my own parents. We'd grown up together, from awkward kids to teenagers on the cusp of adulthood, and he'd always been there for me. He was like an older brother, a father figure, all rolled into one. He'd taught me everything: how to read people, how to weigh the pros and cons of every decision, even how to scheme and manipulate when necessary. He'd promised to always be by my side. I still remembered when I was 14, fooling around in the family pool. I'd just learned to swim, and after a few laps, I'd gotten tired and struggled to make it back to the edge. Water filled my mouth and nose, and I couldn't scream for help. The maid was inside, and she couldn't hear me thrashing. I was drowning, slowly losing consciousness when Lu Yan saw me. His room had a view of the pool. He'd been watching me play, then looked away for a minute, and when he glanced back, I was sinking to the bottom. When I woke up in the hospital, he was sitting beside my bed, still soaking wet, his clothes clinging to his body. He held my hand so tightly, his whole body was shaking. Later, I found out that if he'd been even 1 second later, I would have died. I clung to him, sobbing in terror, and he promised me then and there, no matter where he went, no matter what he did, he'd always take me with him. After that day, we were inseparable. He spoiled me rotten, granting every wish I had. Even my parents used to say he loved me more than anyone else in the world ever could. But now, he'd hurt me for another woman. As he looked at me with that familiar, tender gaze, I almost tricked myself into thinking he still loved me. I felt utterly exhausted, my voice a broken plea. "Brother Yan, let's get married, please." Our families had always been close, old money, well matched. Our parents had been hinting at an alliance for years. We both knew it was coming. And all these years, he treated me like his future wife, kissing me, holding me, being there for me. But whenever I tried to push for something more concrete, he'd pull back, keeping me at arm's length. Our relationship had always been in this weird gray area, not quite lovers, but definitely more than friends. Everyone in our social circle just assumed we were a couple. When he heard my words, his hand froze mid-motion. He stood up and let out a long, heavy sigh. "Qingyu, you'll always be the most important person in my life," he said quietly, "but I've only just realized I don't love you." I didn't understand. If I was the most important person to him, how could he not love me? He walked over to my dressing table and sat down, pulling a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He took one out, put it in his mouth, but didn't light it. "I thought I did," he said. "I thought what I felt for you was love. But then I met Zuji, and I realized this is different. I'm truly in love with her, Qingyu. I can't marry you." He told me their story, how they were mentors, fellow students, how their advisor had been kind to him back in university, so he went to visit the old man every year on his birthday. When Zuji had been there that day, a shy, quiet girl who'd blushed bright red when she saw him, too flustered to even speak. He'd teased her a little, just to see her squirm, and the more she avoided his eyes, the more he'd leaned in, until she finally looked up at him with those big, watery eyes and whispered, "Senior brother, please stop teasing me." That one word, senior brother, had hit him like a feather brushing his heart. In that moment, looking into her eyes, he'd felt something he'd never felt before, a soft, overwhelming urge to protect her. "My heart belongs to her now," Lu Yan said, a bitter smile tugging at his lips. "How can I marry you when my heart is already taken?" I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a delicate hollowed-out porcelain lamp from the Republic of China era on my nightstand, and threw it at him as hard as I could. The lamp shattered into a million pieces on the floor. I screamed at the top of my lungs, my voice raw with pain. "I don't want to hear it." He didn't say anything else as I lost control of my emotions. He just turned and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind him. I tried to fight for him after that, begging, crying, making a complete fool of myself, losing every shred of dignity I had left. But he never wavered. His mind was made up. Eventually, I stopped crying in front of him. I stopped begging. I gave up. But he forgot one crucial thing. He taught me everything I knew. If he wasn't going to show me mercy, then I'd use every trick he'd ever taught me to fight back. If Lu Yan wanted to love someone else, to marry someone else, he'd better be ready to pay the price. Not long after, I hired someone to dig up information on Theo Thurlu family's son, the illegitimate one. It didn't take long to find him. His name was Mu Ran, Lu Yan's half-brother, same father, different mother. Despite being a Lu by blood, Mu Ran's life had been anything but privileged. His mother had worked herself to the bone to put him through college, but right after he graduated, she'd been diagnosed with cancer. He'd racked up mountains of debt to pay for her first surgery, but it hadn't been successful. She needed a second operation, one he couldn't possibly afford. Desperate, he'd gone to the Lu family for help, but they turned him away, cold and cruel. Madame Lu hated Mu Ran's mother with a passion. Years ago, Mr. Lu had had an affair with her, and Mu Ran was the product of that mistake. But Mu Ran's mother had been just as much a victim of Mr. Lu's lies and manipulation. Mu Ran hated the Lu family as much as they hated him. Over the years, Madame Lu had made his life a living hell, sabotaging his chances at jobs, spreading rumors about his mother, making sure he could never get a foot in the door of high society. Mr. Lu, terrified of angering his wife, had turned a blind eye to it all. I visited Mu Ran's mother at the hospital. She was lying in bed with her eyes closed, looking peaceful, like she was just sleeping, but even in her illness, you could see she'd been a stunningly beautiful woman once. I knew Mu Ran visited her every night at 8 o'clock sharp, so I waited for him at the hospital, lying in wait, like a hunter stalking its prey. When he pushed open the ward door, I was stunned. He looked exactly like Lu Yan, tall, lean, with the same elegant bone structure. He was a natural clothes hanger, the same thin lips, the same high, straight nose. The only difference? Mu Ran had sharp, handsome monolids, while Lu Yan had double eyelids that made him look soft and affectionate, even when he was being cold and heartless. I stood up and walked over to him, extending my hand. I didn't beat around the bush, I got straight to the point. "My name is Shen Qinyu," I said. "I'm the only daughter of the Shen family. I can transfer your mother to the best hospital in the city, get her the best doctors, pay for all her medical bills, everything she needs to get better." It was an offer he couldn't refuse. Saving his mother was the only thing that mattered to him, and he knew there was no such thing as a free lunch. Mu Ran lifted his eyes to meet mine, his gaze sharp and questioning. "What do you want in return?" His eyes were like daggers, cutting right through my facade. I hesitated for a second, feeling a flicker of embarrassment before I spoke. "Lu Yan was my fiancé, until he dumped me a few weeks ago, making me the laughingstock of the entire social circle. He was smart, he put two and two together instantly. He knew I wanted revenge on Lu Yan, and he hated the Lu family just as much as I did now." He extended his hand, a faint, cold smile playing on his lips. "Then it's a deal." I moved quickly. Within days, I'd arranged for Mu Ran's mother to be transferred to the top private hospital in the city, and I'd flown in a team of specialists to consult on her case. As we spent more time together, Mu Ran and I grew closer. When the doctors told him his mother's condition was improving, I saw the genuine gratitude in his eyes. After the second surgery was a success, he called me. His voice was thick with emotion, on the verge of tears. "Thank you." In that moment, I felt a pang of sympathy for him. He'd grown up with nothing, raised by a single mother who'd sacrificed everything for him, and yet he'd always been looked down on, always been the illegitimate son in everyone's eyes. I rushed to the hospital right away. When I got there, his eyes were red and swollen from relief, from joy, from the sheer relief of knowing his mother was going to be okay. He was only 1 year older than me, but his life had been so much harder, so much more painful than mine. I reached out and patted his shoulder gently, a silent gesture of comfort. Mu Ran froze for a second, then looked up at me and smiled, a soft, warm smile that made his eyes light up. It was the first real smile I'd seen from him. After that, I started bringing Mu Ran to every party, every social event, every gathering in our circle. It didn't take long for people to start talking. My friends came up to me, confused, asking what was going on. I just shrugged, playing it cool. "He's my new boyfriend." They stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Everyone knew how crazy I'd been about Lu Yan. How could I possibly be with someone else so soon? I knew word would get back to Lu Yan eventually, but days turned into weeks, and he never once reached out to me. He didn't care. Not one bit. I didn't contact Lu Yan either. We didn't speak for months. Then came May, and the 120th anniversary celebration of a university. I was surprised to find out that Mu Ran was an alumni too. He bought 2 of the anniversary t-shirts, and when he put his on, he looked like a college student again, young, bright-eyed, full of life. I decided to take Mu Ran to the celebration. I wanted to see Lu Yan face to face. If we were going to pretend to be a couple, I needed to be more affectionate with Mu Ran for show, of course. But when I slipped my arm through his, he tensed up a little, and the tips of his ears turned pink. It was cute, in a way so different from Lu Yan's cool, composed demeanor. I'd checked the schedule. There was an academic forum in the auditorium in the afternoon, followed by a gala dinner in the evening. Lu Yan was supposed to give a speech as an outstanding alumni representative. I arrived at the auditorium with Mu Ran right on time. I knew Lu Yan's habits. He always arrived 15 minutes early. Sure enough, there he was, holding Wen Zuji's hand. And there I was, arm linked through Mu Ran's. The 4 of us stood there, staring at each other across the crowded hallway. Wen Zuji's face turned pale when she saw me, and she clung tighter to Lu Yan's hand, her gaze suddenly hardening, like she was trying to prove something. Lu Yan's expression never changed. He was as cold and impassive as ever. When we walked closer, I smiled sweetly at him. Brother Yan, what a coincidence. This is my boyfriend, Mu Ran. Lu Yan just shot me a cold, dismissive glance, then turned and led Wen Zuji into the auditorium without saying a single word. The forum was boring, just a bunch of big shots from various industries giving long, tedious speeches. When Lu Yan walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. He was the youngest, most handsome speaker there naturally. He stole the show. But halfway through his speech, I noticed he was distracted. He kept glancing at his phone, his mind clearly elsewhere. Then, without warning, he leaned down and whispered something to Wen Zuji. They both stood up, bowed their heads, and slipped out of the auditorium quietly, like they were trying not to be seen. Even from across the room, I recognized his silhouette instantly. I grabbed Mu Ran's hand and chased after them. But by the time we got to the lobby, they were gone. I stood there, looking around, confused and frustrated. Then Mu Ran tapped my shoulder, nodding his head toward a quiet corner outside the auditorium, hidden behind tall potted plants. There they were. Lu Yan had Wen Zuji pinned against the wall, kissing her like his life depended on it, hungry, desperate, completely lost in the moment. He was doing it on purpose. He knew I'd follow him. He wanted to hurt me. I couldn't watch anymore. I dragged Mu Ran back to the car, got in, and slammed the door shut. I started the engine and peeled out of the parking lot, driving like a maniac. Halfway there, I suddenly turned the steering wheel sharply, heading back toward the auditorium. I was so angry, so hurt. I wanted to crash the car right into them. Thankfully, Mu Ran stopped me just in time. He grabbed the steering wheel, his eyes wide with shock. Are you crazy? I was crazy. In that moment, I wanted to end everything, my pain, his betrayal, all of it. Instead, I drove to the riverbank. I parked the car and finally let the tears fall. At first, I cried silently, my shoulders shaking. Then I couldn't hold it in anymore. I buried my face in the steering wheel and sobbed, my whole body racked with grief. Mu Ran didn't say a word the entire time. He just sat there beside me, quiet and steady, letting me cry it out. When my sobs finally turned into quiet hiccups, he spoke up, his voice soft and gentle. I thought you were trying to make Lu Yan jealous, he said. But it's not him you're hurting, it's yourself. He was right, and that made it even more humiliating. Lu Yan didn't care about me at all. He was off kissing his new girlfriend, while I was here, falling apart over him. I felt miserable, empty, like there was a hole in my chest. I begged Mu Ran to take me somewhere to drink, to forget everything for just a little while. He hesitated, then sighed and agreed, driving me to his apartment. It was a small old apartment in a run-down building on the top floor. By the time we climbed all the stairs, I was out of breath. But inside, it was spotless, clean, cozy, with wooden floors that shone in the light. It was humble, but it felt like a home. So different from the cold, luxurious mansions I was used to. I sat down on the floor, grabbed a can of beer from the fridge, and started drinking. 1 can turned into 2, then 3. Mu Ran watched me for a while, then finally reached over to take the can from my hand. I swatted his hand away, stubbornly clinging to my drink. But he was stronger than me. He easily took the can and set it aside, then grabbed my shoulders, his voice firm. Shan Qin Yu, snap out of it. I looked up at him, my vision blurry from the alcohol. He looked so much like Lu Yan in that moment, the same jawline, the same nose, the same way he looked at me like he cared. I reached out, my fingers brushing his eyebrows, his eyes, my voice slurred with sadness. Tell me, what does she have that I don't? My family is richer. I'm prettier. I've loved you my whole life. Why her? Why not me? I knew it was Mu Ran I was talking to, but in my drunken haze, I was pretending it was Lu Yan. I was begging the man I loved to give me a reason, to tell me what I'd done wrong. I grabbed another can of beer, determined to drink until I couldn't think anymore. This time, Mu Ran didn't stop me. By the time I was thoroughly drunk, I was staring at Mu Ran, tears streaming down my face. I grabbed his face, forcing him to look at me, repeating the same question over and over. Who's prettier, me or her? Tell me the truth. We were so close, our faces inches apart. I could feel his breath on my skin, warm and steady. He stared at me, his eyes dark and unreadable, then finally swallowed hard and spoke, his voice low and hoarse. You are. I didn't believe him. I shook my head, tears falling faster. He repeated it, more firmly this time, his gaze intense. You're beautiful, Qinyu. Lu Yan is an idiot for not seeing that. He looked so sincere, so genuine, that I was stunned into silence. Then, before I could think, before I could stop myself, I leaned in and kissed him. It was a messy, drunken kiss, full of tears and pain and longing. I mumbled against his lips, my words slurred. Good answer, that's your reward. And then I passed out cold, forgetting everything that had just happened. It didn't take long for Lu Yan to lose his patience. A few days after the anniversary celebration, he showed up at my house, waiting for me by his car. He was leaning against the hood, smoking a cigarette, his expression cold and unreadable. You think making me jealous will make me come back to you? He said when he saw me. I walked over to him, reached out, and took the half-smoked cigarette from his fingers. I put it in my mouth, took a deep drag, and blew the smoke out slowly, staring at him through the haze. Are you angry because I have a boyfriend? I asked, my voice calm and steady. Or are you angry because my boyfriend is Mu Ran? Lu Yan's face darkened. He snatched a cigarette back from me and put it in his own mouth, ignoring the faint red lipstick stain on the filter. I've told you 100 times ladies shouldn't smoke. He still hadn't answered my question. I repeated it, my tone sharper this time. Lu Yan narrowed his eyes, his voice cold with warning. You can date anyone you want, Qinyu. I don't care. But stay away from Mu Ran. He's a bastard, a nobody, anyone but him. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. But he looks just like you, Brother Yan. And you know how much I love you. Isn't he the next best thing? I reached out to touch his face, my fingers brushing his cheek. He flinched and pulled away from me, like my touch burned him. I decided to take things a step further. A few days later, I brought Mu Ran home to meet my parents and told them we were getting married. My parents already knew about Lu Yan and Wen Zuji. They'd watch me lose myself over him, watch me beg and cry and lose all my dignity. They weren't happy with Lu Yan, not by a long shot. But I didn't expect their reaction to Mu Ran. They didn't treat him like the illegitimate son of the Lu family. They were warm, welcoming, asking him about his studies, his job, his mother's recovery. Mu Ran answered every question politely, confidently, showing a maturity and intelligence that impressed them. My parents nodded along, their eyes lighting up with approval. After Mu Ran left, I couldn't help but ask my mom about it, confused. Why aren't you surprised? Why aren't you angry that I'm marrying an illegitimate son? My mom sighed, reaching out to brush a strand of hair from my face, her touch gentle and loving. Silly girl, you're our daughter. We know what you're thinking. We always have. My eyes filled with tears, and I threw my arms around her, hugging her tight. I wanted to cry, but I held it back. She patted my back, her voice soft. Mu Ran is a good boy, Qinyu. He's kind, hardworking, and he cares about you even if it's just for now. Whatever happens, promise me you won't do anything stupid for Lu Yan ever again. Promise me you'll take care of yourself. I nodded, burying my face in her shoulder, tears finally spilling over. After that, I started introducing Mu Ran as my fiancé at every event. Word spread quickly through the social circle. Everyone was talking about the Shen family's daughter marrying the Lu family's illegitimate son. Madame Lu called me, screaming and yelling, demanding I break things off with Mu Ran. I hung up on her without a second thought. Eventually, Lu Yan called me himself, asking to meet. I agreed happily. When we met at the cafe, I could see the anger and frustration in his eyes. He finally understood my plan. I wasn't just trying to make him jealous, I was trying to threaten him. Mr. Lu had always felt guilty about Mu Ran, but he'd never dared to go against his wife. If I married Muran, the Shen family would become his strongest backer. I would help him claim his rightful place in the Lu family, and then, who knew who would end up with control of the Lu Corporation? I leaned back in my chair, smiling sweetly, finally showing him my true colors. You have two choices, Brother Yan. 1. You stay with Wen Zuji, and I marry Muran. We'll help him take over the Lu Corporation, and you'll lose everything. 2. You break up with Wen Zuji, and marry me. We'll merge our family's businesses, and you'll have everything you've ever wanted. I'd learned from the best. He taught me that if you want something badly enough, you have to be willing to do whatever it takes, no matter how ruthless. Lu Yan stared at me for a long time, then suddenly clapped his hands, a cold, mocking smile on his lips. You've learned well, Qin Yu. I'm proud of you. We knew each other too well. We knew each other's weaknesses, each other's desires. Lu Yan valued his wealth, his power, his status above everything else. And I was someone who never gave up, who never backed down no matter the cost. I was forcing him to choose between Wen Zuji and his fortune, and I knew exactly what he would pick. He dared to hurt me, to humiliate me. Now he would pay the price. Lu Yan chose the money. Of course he did. We got married a few months later. He broke up with Wen Zuji right before the wedding, sending her to study abroad all the way across the ocean, where she'd be far away from us, far away from his new life. On the day when Zuji left, I heard Lu Yan smoking on the balcony late into the night. I heard him sigh, a deep, heavy sound, like he was mourning something he'd lost. But I didn't care. He'd made his choice. As for Muran, I transferred a large sum of money to his bank account, enough to cover his mother's medical bills and set him up for life. At first, he refused to take it, but I insisted, transferring it anyway. When we said goodbye, Muran looked at me with a complicated expression, his eyes dark and unreadable. He asked me a question, his voice soft. What if Lu Yan never falls in love with you? What then? I smiled, a bitter, empty smile. Then at least I'm the one who gets to be Mrs. Lu. At least I have everything he values most. I paused, then added, thank you for your help, Muran. But Lu Yan will never let you forget this. He'll come after you. I've arranged for you to work at a hospital abroad far away from here. Take your mother and leave. Don't look back. I wasn't being kind. I knew Muran hated the Lu family, and I knew he would one day come back to take revenge. I couldn't let that happen, not when I'd just won. Muran stared at me for a long time, then nodded slowly. He whispered thank you again, then turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone. Our wedding was a grand affair, the biggest social event of the year. The union of the Shen and Lu families was front-page news, a symbol of power and wealth. Everyone praised us as the perfect couple, young, rich, beautiful. But behind closed doors, our marriage was nothing but a business deal. Lu Yan was busy with work, traveling all over the world to expand the family business. I was the only daughter of the Shen family, so I started taking over our company's operations, proving myself to be a capable, shrewd leader just like he'd taught me. We were so busy that we barely saw each other. Some months, we didn't even speak. It was like we were roommates, not husband and wife. Sometimes, when I came home late at night to our empty, cold mansion, I'd find myself wondering how we'd ended up like this. How the boy who'd saved my life, who'd promised to always be by my side, had become a stranger. I tried to talk to him about it a few times, but every time we sat down together, we had nothing to say. The silence between us was heavy, suffocating. Once, he broke the silence himself, his voice cold and distant. Qin Yu, you should know, ever since you schemed to marry me, things between us have changed forever. We can never go back to the way we were. I looked at him, my heart breaking into a million pieces. But I forced a smile, my voice steady. Then let's have a child, Brother Yan. A child will tie us together forever. It was a stupid idea, a desperate one. I knew that. I'd seen so many women in our circle use children to hold on to their husbands, to save their failing marriages. I'd always thought it was pathetic. But now, I was willing to try anything to keep him close. Our parents were thrilled at the idea. A grandchild would cement the alliance between our families, ensuring our business's success for generations to come. They pressured us constantly, urging us to start a family. After months of their nagging, Lu Yan finally agreed, but he was still traveling all the time, still busy with work. We barely spent any time together, so it was no surprise that after 3 years of marriage, I still wasn't pregnant. That winter, during the Lunar New Year, we went back to the Lu family mansion to celebrate. Madame Lu handed me a bowl of thick, bitter-smelling herbal medicine, her eyes full of expectation. This will help you conceive, she knew. Drink it every day, it's good for you. I knew it wasn't my fault. We'd slept together so rarely. It was a miracle I hadn't given up already. But I didn't say anything. I just took the bowl and drank the bitter medicine, swallowing it down without a word. When we left the mansion, the trunk of the car was filled with bags of herbal medicine. I took them home and boiled them every day, filling the house with that bitter, acrid smell. One day, Lu Yen came home early and found me standing in the kitchen, stirring the medicine pot. He walked over and tried to take the bowl from my hand, but I pulled away. He sighed, his voice soft with something that might have been pity. Qin Yu, did I ever teach you to do something this foolish? Tears fell into the bowl, mixing with the dark, bitter liquid. My voice was a whisper, barely audible. Why did you fall in love with her, Brother Yan? I just wanted to keep you by my side. That's all I ever wanted. Our relationship improved a little after that. The traditional industries our families were involved in were struggling, facing declining profits, outdated technology, fierce competition. We decided to partner up and start a new company, focusing on high-tech industries like artificial intelligence and renewable energy. For the first time in years, we were working together, truly together. We spent every day at the office, discussing business plans, analyzing market trends, solving problems. We were busy, exhausted, but for the first time since we'd gotten married, there was no awkward silence between us. He started asking for my opinions, valuing my input. He trusted me, truly trusted me to make the right decisions for our company. Once, we stayed up all night debating a new investment strategy. By the time we finally reached an agreement, the sky outside the office window was turning pale pink with the first light of dawn. The city was quiet, peaceful, wrapped in the soft mist of early morning. Lu Yen looked at me, a faint smile on his lips, the first real smile I'd seen from him in years. Let's go. I want to show you something. He drove me to the top of the mountain on the outskirts of the city, speeding down the empty roads, the cool early summer wind blowing through my hair. He was smiling, laughing, like he was young again, like the boy I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. We arrived just in time for the sunrise. The sky turned from pale pink to fiery orange, painting the clouds in brilliant hues. The mountains below were shrouded in mist, the world quiet and beautiful and perfect. I suddenly remembered a day from years ago when I was still in college, and he'd taken me to this same mountain to watch the sunrise. On the way down, I'd pretended my legs hurt, making him carry me on his back all the way to the car. He'd complained, but his eyes had been full of laughter, full of love. It felt like a lifetime ago. Tears filled my eyes, blurring my vision. I reached out and took his hand, my voice trembling with emotion. Brother Yan, let's start over. Please, for real this time. Lu Yen stared at me, his eyes dark and complicated, filled with a million unspoken words. Then he pulled me into his arms, holding me tight, and whispered in my ear, his voice thick with emotion. Okay, let's start over. Those were the happiest months of my life. We were like a real couple. He made me breakfast every morning. He held my hand when we walked. He kissed me when we said goodbye. He told me to stop drinking the bitter herbal medicine, saying we'd have a baby when the time was right, naturally, without any pills or potions. We went to work together every day, came home together every night. Sometimes, when we were stopped at a red light, he'd lean over and kiss me, slow and sweet, like he couldn't get enough of me. We started trying for a baby in earnest, hopeful and happy, looking forward to the day when we'd have a little one to love. I often found myself thinking, if that accident hadn't happened, would I have stayed in that happy little bubble forever? Would I have spent the rest of my life believing he loved me, never knowing the truth? The accident happened in winter. Lu Yen was supposed to go abroad for a business trip, an important meeting with a potential investor. That night, it was snowing heavily. I had a bad feeling, a sense of dread that I couldn't shake. I begged him to postpone the trip, to wait until the weather cleared. But he refused, saying the meeting was too important to miss. I should have insisted. I should have stopped him. But I didn't. That night, the news came. A truck had crashed into his car on the highway. The driver was killed instantly. Lu Yan, sitting in the back seat, was critically injured, fighting for his life. He was in the ICU for a month, one long, terrifying month of waiting, of praying, of clinging to hope. Against all odds, he survived, but he never woke up. The doctors said he was in a vegetative state, conscious, but unable to move, unable to speak, unable to respond to the world around him. The chances of him ever waking up were slim to none. He lay in the hospital bed, his body still warm, his chest rising and falling with each shallow breath, looking like he was just sleeping. I sat beside him every day, holding his hand, talking to him about our childhood, about our wedding, about our plans for the future. I told him I loved him. I told him I was sorry. I told him to come back to me, but he never responded. He never even opened his eyes. I finally broke down completely, utterly, irreparably. I'd finally gotten him back. Finally had the life I'd always wanted. And then the universe had cruelly snatched it away. But the worst was yet to come. Mr. Lu couldn't accept that his heir was now a vegetable, a burden, a liability. Lu Yan was no longer useful to him. So he did the unthinkable. He publicly acknowledged Mu Ren as his son, bringing him back into the Lu family and naming him the new heir to the Lu Corporation. When I heard the news, something in me snapped. The grief, the pain, the anger, they all vanished, replaced by a cold, hard determination. People like us, we were born into wealth and privilege, but our lives were always balanced on a knife's edge. Everything we had was built on power, on money, on alliances. And I wasn't about to let Lu Yan lose everything he'd worked for. I wasn't about to let the man I loved be humiliated like this. I was going to take back what was his, no matter what it cost. I hadn't seen Mu Ran in for years. When we met again at the Lu Corporation's board meeting, he was a different man, taller, more confident, his once sharp edges smoothed out by time and success. He'd started his own company abroad, and it had grown into a thriving business. He was no longer the quiet, insecure boy I'd met in the hospital. He was a force to be reckoned with. He looked at me and smiled, a faint, knowing smile. Long time no see, he knew. We talked like old friends, catching up on the past for years, talking about his mother who'd passed away 2 years earlier, peacefully, surrounded by love, talking about his business, talking about Lu Yan. But underneath the polite small talk, we both knew the truth. We were enemies now. Mr. Lu had called the board meeting to formalize Mu Ran's position as the new CEO of the Lu Corporation. I attended the meeting as Lu Yan's legal representative, determined to fight for his rights. The meeting was a battlefield, shouting, arguing, threats flying left and right. Mr. Lu had the support of most of the board members, but I had the support of the Shen family, and I was willing to fight dirty. I used every trick Lu Yan had ever taught me: blackmail, bribery, manipulation, to turn the tide in my favor. In the end, we reached a compromise. I would take over Lu Yan's position as the CEO of the Lu Corporation, while Mu Ran would be appointed as the COO, second in command. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was enough. For now. The next few months were the hardest of my life. I spent my days fighting with the board members, with Mr. Lu, with Mu Ran, trying to keep control of the company. I spent my nights at the hospital, sitting by Lu Yan's bed, talking to him, reading to him, holding his hand. I was exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally. I was running on fumes, barely eating, barely sleeping. It was only a matter of time before my body gave out. It happened after a particularly brutal board meeting. I walked out of the conference room, my head spinning, my vision going black. The last thing I saw before I collapsed was Mu Ran's face, pale, panicked, rushing toward me. When I woke up in the hospital, Mu Ran was sitting beside my bed, his eyes dark with worry. The doctor said I was suffering from exhaustion, from stress, from overworking myself. Mu Ran grabbed my hand, his voice tight with concern. "You have to take care of yourself, Qin Yu. You can't keep doing this." I pulled my hand away, my voice cold and distant. "I'll be fine. Just stop trying to take over the company, and I'll have a lot less stress to deal with." Mu Ran looked at me, his eyes filled with pity, with sadness. "Qin Yu, don't you see? Lu Yan isn't worth this. He's not worth destroying yourself for." I didn't understand what he meant, not until a few weeks later. I was trying to win over one of the board members, a stubborn old man who held a lot of power. I invited him to dinner, and he made me a deal. If I drank an entire bottle of expensive whiskey, he'd vote in my favor at the next board meeting. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the bottle and started drinking, one glass after another, ignoring the burn in my throat, ignoring the way my head spun. I drank until I passed out. When I woke up in the hospital again, my stomach was in agony. The doctor said I'd suffered a gastric hemorrhage from drinking too much. Mu Ren was there, sitting beside my bed, his face filled with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. He didn't say anything at first, just stared at me, his eyes red with frustration. Then he finally exploded, his voice loud and angry. "Do you know why he insisted on going on that trip? Do you know why he left you that night, even though you begged him not to?" My heart dropped. I felt a cold, sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew he was going to tell me something I didn't want to hear. I tried to stop him, but he kept talking, his voice a roar. He wasn't going for a business meeting. He was going to see Wen Zuji. They never broke up, she knew. They've been together this entire time for years of lying, of pretending, of making you think he loved you. You've been nothing but a pawn in his game. It couldn't be true. It was impossible. He'd promised me we'd start over. He'd held me, kissed me, told me he loved me. We'd planned to have a baby together. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face, my eyes filled with tears. Shut up! You're lying! He would never do that to me. But Mu Ren didn't flinch. He grabbed my wrists, spinning them above my head, his eyes blazing with anger and pain. You want proof? Fine, I'll give you proof. I'll show you the truth, whether you want to see it or not. A few days later, when I was well enough to travel, Mu Ren handed me 2 plane tickets to Los Angeles, the same city where Wen Zuji had gone to study abroad. I stared at the tickets, my hands shaking. Then I took them from him. My mind made up. I had to know the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The truth was worse than anything I could have imagined. Wen Zuji was living in a luxurious mansion in Beverly Hills paid for by Lu Yan. And she had a child, a little boy, 2 years old, with Lu Yan's eyes, Lu Yan's nose, Lu Yan's smile. I sat in the car across the street, watching them through the window. Wen Zuji was pushing the little boy on a swing in the backyard, her face soft with love. The boy was laughing, his voice high and clear, looking exactly like Lu Yan had when he was a child. Mu Ren sat beside me, his voice cold and cruel, like he was enjoying my pain. That trip he took, it was for the boy's 2nd birthday. He couldn't miss it. He loved them. She knew. He loved her. You were just a convenient wife, a way to keep the Shen and Lu families happy, a way to protect his real family. Mu Ren told me more how Lu Yan had been sending money to Wen Zuji every month for years, how he'd been visiting her secretly whenever he went abroad, how he'd lied to me about every business trip, every late night at the office. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't believe it. So I did the only thing I could think of. I hired a private investigator to get a DNA sample from the little boy, a strand of hair left on a toy in the backyard. A week later, the results came back. The DNA match was 99.9%. The little boy was Lu Yan's son. My world crumbled around me. All those months of happiness, of hope, of thinking we'd finally found our way back to each other, it had all been a lie. A cruel, calculated lie. I'd been so desperate to keep him, so desperate to believe he loved me, that I'd ignored all the signs. I'd been a fool, a stupid, naive fool. I sat in the car, staring at the happy family through the window, and I laughed. I laughed until tears streamed down my face, until my sides hurt, until I couldn't breathe. All those years of loving him, of fighting for him, of sacrificing everything for him, what had it all been for? Mu Ren knelt down beside me, his voice soft, his hand gentle as he wiped the tears from my face. I'm sorry, Qinyu. I'm so sorry. I looked at him, my eyes empty, my heart broken beyond repair. Why are you telling me this, Mu Ren? Do you want me to hate him? Do you want me to give up on him? He stared at me, his eyes dark with emotion, with something that looked a lot like love. I don't want you to hate him. I want you to wake up. I want you to see him for who he really is, a selfish, manipulative man who doesn't deserve you. I've watched you destroy yourself for him for years, and I can't take it anymore. I love you, Qinyu. I've loved you since the day we met in the hospital. His confession hung in the air between us, heavy and unexpected. I stared at him, too numb to speak, too broken to feel anything. He leaned in, his lips brushing mine, soft and gentle. I didn't push him away. I didn't move. I just let him kiss me, let him hold me, let him comfort me. That night, I went back to the hospital to see Lu Yan. He was lying in bed, just like he always was, quiet, still, peaceful. I sat beside him, taking his hand in mine, and I told him everything. I told him I knew about Wen Zuji, about the little boy, about all the lies. I told him how much I'd loved him, how much I'd sacrificed, how much he'd hurt me. I leaned in, my lips brushing his ear, my voice cold and quiet, full of a hatred I didn't know I was capable of. You lied to me, Brother Yan. You used me, manipulated me, made me your pawn. But I'm not that naive girl anymore. I'm not going to let you win. I kissed his forehead, a cold, final kiss. Wen Zuji will never get a single cent from the Lu family. I'll make sure of that. And if there ever comes a day when medical technology can wake you up, I'll make sure you stay exactly like this, trapped in your own body, unable to move, unable to speak, unable to see the woman you love. I'll keep you here, with me forever. You'll be mine, brother Yan. Completely, utterly mine. No one else's. As I stood up to leave, I saw a tear slide down his cheek, a single, silent tear, a reflex of his body. Nothing more. I didn't care. I turned and walked out of the room, closing the door softly behind me. It was snowing again, big, fluffy snowflakes, falling gently from the sky, covering the world in white. I stood outside the hospital, watching the snow fall, when I felt someone standing beside me. It was Moran. He'd been waiting for me, his shoulders covered in snow, his eyes warm and steady. He took my hand in his, rubbing it gently to warm it up, his touch soft and comforting. I looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of hope. A flicker of something that wasn't pain, or anger, or hatred. I thought about Wen Zuji and her little boy, about Lu Yan lying in his hospital bed, about all the lies and the manipulation and the heartbreak. I thought about love, about the kind of love that makes you happy, and the kind that destroys you. What was love, really? Was it the kind of love that makes you willing to be lied to be used, to be hurt? Or was it the kind of love that stands by you, that protects you, that loves you even when you're broken? I looked at Moran, and I smiled, a real smile, the first one I'd smiled in a long time. Then I spoke, my voice clear and steady, my mind made up. I want the Lu Corporation to be mine, completely mine. Can you help me do that? Moran stared at me for a long time, then smiled back, his eyes lighting up with hope, with love, with determination. He squeezed my hand, his voice firm, his answer simple. Yes. After all, if love was just another tool to be used, another game to be won, then I might as well use it, and I would win, no matter what it cost.